Greetings and salutations, and welcome back to yet another episode of this time-lapse where I level my human rogue. Today we are leveling from level 30 to level 31. Today I thought we could talk a bit about consumables. So things you can eat and drink like elixirs and food that are useful for when you are raiding in the end game. And while we are doing that, you can enjoy the trip to Norwegian that will be the biggest part of today's time-lapse. So let's jump into it. So generally when you are raiding, it is advisable to bring at least a few consumables. And I've listed a few that can be very useful. Maybe not all of these are required, but I'm listing those that are easy accessible, those are common used, and I'll also be adding a few nice to haves at the end of the video. First off, there's thistle tea. So thistle tea is a cooking recipe you get from a rogue quest, and it only requires 60 cooking in order to craft this. So the reason I'm mentioning this is that this is rogue specific, and it's fairly easy to obtain. It restores 500 energy and have a 5-minute cooldown. So these can be nice to pop during combat just to get that extra 100 energy to dish out that additional damage, especially in critical phases where you really need to dish out a lot of damage in no time. Even if you sold or discarded the recipe by accident, you can buy it at Smudge Thunderwood in the basement of the Ravenhold Manor in Alterac Mountains. It's important to note though that you can only buy it if you already did the quest. To craft thistle tea, you need Swift Thistle, which you obtain as secondary loot from Briarthorn and Mage Royale when you are doing herbalism. Next up is grilled squid. So grilled squid is used as food, so unlike thistle tea that you just pop, you actually need to sit down and eat this. So grilled squid gives you 10 agility and it lasts for 10 minutes. You get the recipe from Gikix in Steamwhittle Port in Tenaris. In order to craft this, you need winter squid, which can only be caught during winter, which makes this a bit tricky, and I advise you in the winter period, you should stack up on these winter squids. According to Legacy WoW, you can catch these from September 23rd to March 19th. This is obviously something I haven't been able to verify as WoW Classic haven't been out for that long yet, but I thought I'd just add that information to this video anyways. Winter squid can be caught in Ashera, Ferrelas, Hinterlands, Tenaris, and in Stranglethorn Vale, but only on Jaguero Isle. I have no idea if I pronounce the name of that isle correctly. So during the summer periods where this grilled squid can be quite expensive, there's an alternative you can use instead, which is the Blessed Sunfruit. So the Blessed Sunfruit grants 10 strength and also lasts for 10 minutes. You can buy this from Argent Dawn the moment you have a read with them. Next up is Elixir of the Mongoose. So it's an alchemy recipe that requires 280 alchemy to craft. It gives you 25 agility and a 2% crit chance for 1 hour. This is probably the best buff you can get for the rogue because you get your agility and you get your crit chance. And as we talked about in the last video, if you haven't seen it, you should go check it out. You also get crit chance from agility. And from those 25 agility, you almost gain 1 extra % of crit chance. So in order to craft Elixir of the Mongoose, you need 2 times Mountain Silver Sage, 2 times Plague Bloom, and a Crystal Vial. So unless you are in a really hardcore raiding guild, Elixir of the Mongoose is probably the only required thing you need from alchemy when you're raiding as a rogue. Maybe except for the greater protection potions, which we will mention a bit later in the video. So next we have Winterfall Firewater. So Winterfall Firewater drops from the Winterfall Furbolgs in Winterspring and some in Felwood as well. It grants 35 attack power and increases your size by 20% if you're into that kind of thing. So these cannot be crafted, they can only be farmed or you can buy them off the auction house. Since these only last for 20 minutes, you can go through quite a few of them during a raid night. Then there are the Jujus. So there are Juju Might and there's Juju Power. Juju Might grants you 40 attack powers, whereas Juju Power grants you 30 strength. These two stack together, so effectively you have 70 attack power from this as a rogue. The thing is, these only last for 10 minutes, and you get those from a repeatable quest in Winterspring, from Witch Doctor Auri, again with these pronunciations. And here you collect ecos from creatures in Winterspring that you then turn in for these Jujus. It's important to note that Juju Might, the one that gives attack power, does not stack with Winterfall Firewater, so you may have to consider which one you want to take. Although the Juju does grant 5 more attack power than the Winterfall Firewater lasts for twice as long, and you can buy them if you need them, whereas the others are bind on pickup, so you are forced to farm the Jujus if you want them. Then there are the nice to haves. And with nice to haves I mean that they are not really necessary because they don't add to your damage in any way, they only add to your survivability, or they are quite hard to get. So first off, there's the Flask of Titans. It requires 300 alchemy and they are quite expensive to craft. You need 30 Grum's Blood, 10 Stone Scale Oil, a Black Lothos and a Crystal Vial to craft one. So Flask of the Titans does grant you 1200 hit points and it lasts for 2 hours. And it persists through death, which is the thing with flasks, they always persist through death and last for 2 hours. While 1200 hit points is really amazing, it's not really a requirement unless you are in a hardcore raiding guild, then they probably would set that up as a requirement as well. Then there's Flask of Chromatic Resistance. So this grants 25 to all resist, also for 2 hours, and it persists through death. To create it you need 30 Ice Cap, 10 Mountain Silver Sage, a Black Lotus and a Crystal Vial. So the reason I mention it is that there are a lot of resistance requirements in WoW Classic. For instance, in Molten Core and in Blackwing Lair you would benefit quite a bit from having a lot of fire resist. So these Flask of Chromatic Resistance can be used if your gear are a little bit weak in the resistance department, then you can buff it up a little bit. Personally I would probably do the Flask of Titans if I had to take a flask. Then there are the Ground Scorpic Assay and the Roids. So these are both rewards from repeatable quests that you can do in Blasted Lands that you get from Bloodmates Thrasial. Again, these crazy names. So the thing with these is that you can only carry one of each since they are unique, but they do grant 25 agility and 25 strength respectively and last for 60 minutes. And they stack with other buffs, so it's quite nice to have, but it's a bit cumbersome since you can only have one, so you kind of need to decide when you want to use it. And if you die, you lose the effect. So I would say if you bring this, then you are definitely showing a lot of dedication to your raid team. Then there are the greater protection potions, like greater fire protection potion, greater frost protection potion, and so on. So these protection potions, they absorb a certain amount of damage. So for the fire protection potion, for example, it absorbs between 1950 and 3250 fire damage. So there's a bit of a variation there. And it has a 2-minute cooldown. But that basically means that whatever fire damage in this case that you receive will simply be absorbed, which can be immensely helpful on some encounters. Moving on to the last on the list, which are bandages. So I think bandages cannot be emphasized enough because they are very important in Classic. If you're used to playing retail, I know that they kind of got fairly useless, but in Classic they are very important. Also as a rogue, even though you are in melee, there are encounters where you would need to bandage yourself. At least I remember back when I did Molten Core raids in Vanilla, when we were doing Baron-Geddon, there were cases where we as rogues had to bandage ourselves. Especially when your guild is kind of doing the first tries and kind of getting the hang of the encounters and stuff, it is very useful that you can keep yourself alive. You do way more damage being alive from a bandage than being dead because you didn't do it. And even though leveling first aid can be a bit of a hassle, I would recommend doing it while you are leveling, because it is useful to have doing leveling as well, as you can quickly gouge your opponents and use these 3, 4, maybe 5 ticks of healing that you get from your bandage. So that was my list at least. There are more consumables, like way more that you can carry on with you to your raids if you want. So there are the Elixir of Fortitude that grants you 120 hit points. There's the Elixir of Superior Defense that grants you 450 armor. There's the Major Troll's Blood Potion for an extra 20 health regen per 5. There's even the Gift of Arthas that gives you some shadow resistance and a chance to debuff your attackers, and so forth. But I think a lot of these are not really needed. They give you a bit more survivability, but I think the main focus here as a rogue should be damage. There's also weapon buffs like Sharpening Stones and elemental sharpening stone and mana oil and all that stuff. But as a rogue, you don't need any of this. Either they give you mana stuff or they give you increased weapon damage, but preferably you want to use your poisons, and the poisons does not stack with these weapon buffs. And I also suppose, which should probably go without saying, that when you're going on raids, you should bring some healing potions, because they can really save you if you mess up or something goes wrong. And I cannot emphasize enough that you do more damage being alive than being dead, obviously. So I'm also aware that there are the sensor buffs that you can get for the Sandalar honor tokens, but I thought I wouldn't want to mention them. So anyways, what do you think? Did I miss something? Are there buffs you prefer? What is your opinion on the survivability of the rogue? Should you bring your flasks? And should you also invest in the armor and hit point and regen elixirs? What do you think? Personally, I would do it if I had it in my bank, but otherwise I wouldn't. But I suppose sometimes it's nice to stock up, especially for these winter squids, since you can only get them in the winter period. And if you need some money, why not do a lot of fishing in the winter period, and when you go bit into summer, you can start selling them for a hefty price on the auction house. Because there's always someone who needs to use grilled squid. Anyways, that's all what I had for this topic for today. So if you have any input or ideas to what we can talk about in future videos, please do let me know. We still have close to 30 levels and videos to go through yet, so there's a lot of things we can discuss. So if there's anything interesting related to WoW or WoW Classic or the Rogue that you want me to talk about, do let me know, and I'll be happy to do a bit of research on the topic and put a few words on it. Anyways, if we take a look at that nice XP bar, it seems that we are getting very close to the level up. So I would guess that killing off this raptor here would get us there. And there it is. So that was it for this video. So if you like what we're doing here, definitely leave a like below. Costs you nothing and it helps me out, so I'd appreciate it. At least if you like what we're doing, of course. Also, if you're new here, subscribe to tag along. There's a bit of a way to 60 yet, and there's a lot of good stuff that we can talk about, so don't hesitate to tag along. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and you'll see me in the next video.